Howdy! Welcome to episode 19 of the See-Through Podcast, a podcast that creates transparency on disabilities and the champions with them. My name is Lance Johnson, and I am the host of this podcast. I am super hyped for everyone to hear today's episode, as I was able to talk with Casey Acree. Casey is an adaptive athlete who is a health and fitness coach, adaptive CrossFit champion, and all-around nice dude. Casey shared some very interesting insights with me about living life as a congenital amputee. What's that? Congenital amputation is a condition where a person is born without a limb or portion of a limb. In fact, 1 in 2,000 babies are born with congenital amputation each year. In Casey's case, Casey was born without part of his left arm, but with the classic magical combo of hard work and determination. Casey's athleticism has always been his strongest, no pun intended there, attribute. For example, with the help of a strap made for razor scooters, Casey is able to clean and jerk over 270 pounds. And yes, we'll cover more details about that razor scooter strap. Also, if you want to see Casey in action after the episode, I recommend checking out his Instagram. His handle is @CoachCaseyAcree. He has a bunch of videos of him training on there, and it's all really impressive stuff. So yeah, go check that out. But I think that does it for this intro, as I don't want to keep you any longer from hearing the actual conversation. So here it is, episode 19 with Casey Acree. Enjoy. What's up, Casey? Thanks for chatting with me today, man.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Where are you located?
I live in central Illinois. So I live in a super small town called Illiopolis. So I am between kind of the two bigger towns nearby. I'm like right in between Springfield and Decatur. So basically smack dab in the middle of farmland.
Okay. Illiopolis?
Illiopolis, yep. It means the city. It means the city of Illinois.
It's a very literal name, but yeah, it's like a tongue twister name.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you from Illinois?
Yes, I am. I grew up literally like 10 minutes from where I live in another small town called Harestown. And yeah, been here my whole life. Stayed home once I decided to start my career and everything. So. I like the small town vibe, I guess you could say.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of your career, tell everyone what you do.
So I am a professional fitness coach. I own a business with my two best friends that I grew up with called Summit Systems. We are both, we have a gym where we train individuals and athletes. And then we also do remote online coaching for individuals. So I kind of get to, basically kind of create my own schedule, kind of have gotten to, take ownership of my career. I have always been passionate about fitness and got into coaching a few years ago and just kind of have gradually worked to coaching one-on-one clients and, basically of any fitness level, any background. I have people from military all the way to, people who just finished doing physical therapy rehab from a surgery and are trying to get moving again. Athletes, youth athletes, older athletes, kind of get to experience a lot of different lifestyles and find the best fitness and lifestyle coaching for each individual.
Nice. I'm very interested in what you do because I recently been getting back into trying to get fit and all that. I played high school sports, and then I kind of lost my active drive, I guess, after getting work and, getting lost in like office jobs and, sitting. But getting back to it.
Yeah.
But I've had knee surgery a couple years ago, and I'm trying to like build up my legs again, and I always get fluid in my knee.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a hassle. So I definitely want to get your opinion on that. But I think before we like move that direction, I brought you on because you're a very fit guy. What's your Instagram handle?
My Instagram is Coach Casey Acree.
Yeah, Coach Casey Acree.
Yeah.
If you're listening, go look up his Instagram and watch some of the videos on there. You're impressive, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And you're impressive even without your disability. I think just your strength is top notch, and that leads me to you have a birth defect, right?
Correct. Yep. Congenital amputee. Missing my left forearm and hand from basically just below my elbow down. So yeah, it was something that I was born with. No one really knows why. My parents knew before I was born, just from like the imaging, that the arm had basically stopped developing while I was in the womb. So yeah, I mean, it's, something that I've dealt with basically my entire life. So, I guess kind of, with what I'm able to do now is just kind of, to me, a result of, always having to find my own way to do things, kind of going into my challenges and always wanting to not just survive and get by, but, try to thrive and be as capable as I possibly can be, which has kind of led me down the path that I've, kind of taken in my life to where I am now, You
definitely seem adaptive.
Yeah.
And you're big into CrossFit, and you've won, you're a CrossFit champion. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I started competing in adaptive CrossFit like 4 or 5 years ago. I had just finished college. I just started actually coaching at a CrossFit gym. And around that time, the world of adaptive CrossFit competition was really just kind of starting to kick off and grow a little bit and kind of expand its reach, around the globe. And so I've competed in several basically world championship type events, and been fairly successful in pretty much all of them. I have an athletic background, so for me it was just kind of I was done with sports, I was done with college, and it was just another way for me to challenge myself, have something to train for. I never really knew for sure if there was going to be an opportunity for someone like me to compete in a sport like CrossFit, where you never really know exactly what is going to be expected of you. I think that's kind of one of the interesting things with CrossFit. It's not the same as like a Paralympic sport, for example, where the challenges are known. The sport is exactly the same every single time. The track is the same distance, or the weight of the object that you're throwing is always the same weight and the same shape. That's kind of one of the interesting things with adaptive CrossFit, is that the challenges that you have to be prepared for are unknown at every competition. So that's one thing that kind of drew me to it, is that I was going to have to, basically become capable in everything. So, I started training pretty hard back whenever I was in college. And like I said, I didn't really know if there was going to ever be an opportunity for me to have a competition. But I basically just kind of prepared as if there was. And so then whenever it became available, I was like, yeah, let's go get it. I've been training and preparing for this, for several years now. And it was just a way for me to kind of get that, that competitive stimulus, or that kind of challenging myself, but also competing against others, something to train for. And that kind of thing really excites me and kind of keeps me going.
Yeah, definitely. You sound like did you play collegiate sports?
I did not play collegiate sports. I played whenever I was in middle school and high school. I played football, basketball, and I ran track. So did those for basically like 9 or 10 years, basically year round. and fairly solid athlete in high school. Small town deal where, if you have kids in your school that are athletic, you're kind of expected or relied on to participate in as much as you can. So never really kind of specialized in any one thing, but competed at a fairly high level in high school as a varsity athlete for several years, and team captain in several sports. And then going into college, like I said, there wasn't really anything that I guess stood out in. So I just kind of decided that there wasn't really any one thing that I wanted to do year round. I was so used to the idea of like, in the fall time you play football,
Yeah.
in the winter time you play basketball, in the springtime you run, and the idea of trying to train solely for one of those things year round didn't really interest me. So just went to school with, I majored in kinesiology to basically lead me into the fitness career path.
Yeah, yeah. And I was bringing up sports because, that kind of, and you just touched on it with, expecting, with each season comes a different sport to train for.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of, you get in this routine and you're used to training for something. And then that training is for a specific thing. You're training for your sport and then you compete in your sport. Like, for example, now I don't play any sports. So it's just like, sometimes I'm working out just for the fun of it and also for the health benefits of it.
Yeah.
And I imagine, like, when you discovered CrossFit, that it kind of was exciting for you as someone who enjoys training for something, that now you have like a new sport to train for.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the cool thing with CrossFit is that, kind of like you mentioned, when you're training for a sport, you have something very specific that you're trying to prepare for. The cool thing about CrossFit is kind of like what I touched on, that there's so many aspects to it that you can't just, focus on trying to get strong, or you can't just focus on trying to be aerobically fit.
Yeah.
You have to kind of balance a lot of different aspects of your training, which, kind of going back to the idea of me being an athlete that played multiple sports, I always had something that was kind of new, an area within every single sport that I played, a part of the game that I needed to, try to improve on. So that, I think, kind of carried over into my interest in CrossFit, that I couldn't just try to, get huge, or I couldn't just go and do nothing but running and aerobic stuff all the time. You have to kind of, balance that out. And it kind of breaks up the monotony of exercise, because you're never really, focusing on one thing in particular. You have to kind of balance those different heads, and yeah, that's, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there, that it was exciting for me, because I had a couple years whenever I first started college that I was just kind of trying to find the drive to continue exercising and training, just for the sake of it. And CrossFit kind of, gave me that extra sense of purpose, or, something to challenge myself a little bit more, to keep me a little more adherent and compliant to my training. And when it comes down to it, a lot of the training for CrossFit isn't really fun. It's really hard, and you have to, really, really push yourself to continue seeing progression, especially if, whenever I started doing CrossFit, I had already been training consistently and exercising consistently for 6 or 7 years. So then to take, someone with that level of experience and training, and then having to try to continue improving, you have to really, really challenge and push yourself. But, if you have that goal, or that kind of end thing that you're trying to push for and achieve, that's just, another reminder to, kind of stay after it. And, we kind of say in the CrossFit world, enjoy the suck. Just, it's sometimes it's not fun. It's kind of dirty and it's painful at times, but, that kind of, that end goal keeps you keeps you where you need to be.
Yeah, I definitely think goals, especially when it comes to fitness, is always helpful for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to go back a little bit. So you played high school sports.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming you played sports growing up, like little league kind of type of sports. Has your arm ever been like a topic of conversation with your teammates or coaches or the town?
Yeah.
Has that always been a part of your story?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think the sports always seem to come back to me as, like I said, a foundation in kind of who I am as a person and how I've, come to achieve some of the things that I've achieved. Sports weren't really, I guess, natural, at least from the skill side of the sports for me. The physical aspect, as far as, being able to run and having, endurance and things like that, I would say that was somewhat natural for me. But, in particular with like basketball and football, those were, when I was growing up, those were like my two favorite sports. I never really got too interested in baseball. And you would think for someone who is missing a hand that soccer would be something that would, be a natural, you'd be inclined to kind of go into that. I really never had the interest in those sports. And that's probably because my older brother was a football player and a basketball player. And so I kind of just always wanted to do whatever he was doing. And so, yeah, for sure. I mean, learning how to dribble a basketball, learning how to shoot a basketball, learning how to catch a football. All of those things were not natural for me at all. But I think if you were to ask any of the teammates that I've ever had, any of the coaches that I've ever had, my hard work and my kind of hustle and drive was probably my greatest talent, my greatest gift when it came to sports. And I think having that as a background, either it's hard to really know how I gained those attributes. A lot of people would say that maybe being born with one arm gave me those attributes because I always had to push myself even harder to even get to a level playing field, or maybe I had some of those attributes naturally. I don't really know. But that was definitely the key for me in being able to just compete at the same level as some of my teammates and some of my competitors whenever I was first getting started in youth sports. So I started playing basketball in like 4th grade, started playing football in 5th grade. And yeah, like I said, like just some of the aspects of those sports were not natural to me. I was not at the same level as some of the other kids. But I was so competitive, and it almost frustrated me that I was not as good as some of the other kids, but it frustrated me positively. Like I knew that it was going to be a challenge, but I wanted to, go into it. I wanted to see what I was going to be capable of. And so I just worked my butt off. And like I said, I think if you were to ask any of the coaches that I had growing up, they would say that I was probably the hardest worker that they ever had. And I think, again, it was because I had to. That was one controllable factor. I couldn't control that every other person I was competing against had 2 hands, but I could control how hard I was working and the effort that I was going to give, and that I was going to give that effort consistently on every single play, every single minute in practice. So yeah, growing up, the whole aspect of me only having one hand was definitely a something that people knew about. We talked about, the coaches recognized where maybe some of my limitations were going to be, but also could see the effort that I gave day in and day out. So a few years into sports, and I would say definitely whenever I got into like 6th or 7th grade playing like middle school basketball, that was whenever that effort started to really pay off, where the skills had kind of caught up with, the rest of my teammates and the people that I was competing against, to where, I almost made not having 2 hands a non-factor. that was always kind of something that even from a young age, I tried to keep in mind, was that I don't want to be a good player just relative to someone who has one hand. I just want to be the best player. I want to be the best player on the field, the best player on the court out of everyone. I don't want to just be the best one-armed player on the court, and that to me allowed that kind of framework allowed for me to never use my arm as an excuse, because if that was what my target was, then I was going to have to totally forget about the fact that I was at a disadvantage from the time that the horn sounded, So yeah, that was a huge part of, my growth as a child, dealing with some of those challenges, dealing with some of those, at times letdowns. And there's a few that kind of stick out to me. When I was in fourth grade, there were not enough fifth graders to have a full team. The fifth graders were the only ones who got to play actual games. As a fourth grader, you just went to practices. You didn't have any games scheduled. But on our team, we got to have 4 fourth graders were going to be chosen to play with the fifth grade team. And I was not one of those 3 fourth graders that were chosen to play with the fifth grade team. And it sounds just like so silly that, to this day, I'm 28 years old and I still remember something so, that in the grand scheme of things, maybe doesn't even matter. But to me, that was like, okay, I hated that. I felt like that should have been me that got to go play in those games. And I wanted to compete so badly that, from that point on, I pushed myself so hard to, not let that ever happen again. I wanted to, be involved in and compete in everything that I possibly could. And so things like that still stick out to me, because from the night that our coach announced who those 3 players were going to be, I can remember as a kid growing up, every single night I was out in my driveway shooting hoops, working on my dribbling, trying to get better at playing basketball. And this would be, in the middle of the winter, it's 20 degrees outside, and I would have on like coats, gloves, snow pants, but I'd be outside trying to, work on becoming a better basketball player. So, yeah, those challenges and those kind of setbacks, fortunately motivated me, and instead of, tearing me down or some people in that situation would maybe just kind of give up. They would say, well, I don't really want to play basketball anyways. To me, those types of things motivated me to try to get better. And I think long-term, those things kind of really paid off for me as I got into the later years in middle school and into high school. Because by that point I was able to compete on a level playing field with everyone else, on my team and who we're playing against.
Yeah, definitely. And, and I understand, small moments like that can impact your mindset. I've been cut from a few sports teams, and I was a decent athlete, and I typically never was cut from teams, but I have been cut a few times in middle school, and I remember it just stings.
Yeah.
It just stings. And at that, it kind of puts you in a spot where, all right, the next season is the next year. So what are you going to do? Are you going to try out next year, or do you, And but I think the main point I got from what you just said was just like, you hold yourself accountable, and it's up to you, no one else, not the world, not the hand that you were dealt with your arm. It's just, if I want to play, if I want to compete, then I have to put in the work, and you're holding yourself accountable.
Yeah.
You're not giving yourself excuses. And I think that mindset is what, gives you the drive, what it sounds like gives you the drive to put the time and energy in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing with that is that I was fortunate enough, maybe I did have some of this natural internal drive and, accountability for myself. But I'm also, I always will say, like, I was just fortunate enough to, my parents never really treated me differently. Like they expected the same out of me as they did with all of my other siblings. They never really allowed for me to be coddled or to use my arm as an excuse. My brother, same thing. Having an older brother who was a really, really gifted athlete, like never babied me. I don't know if he had the foresight as a kid to know that, I was going to face these challenges. So whenever we were just playing in the yard or doing whatever, he was going 100% on me. He was never going to let down on me just to like, let me win, And then also I think the other thing is that the coaches that I had never allowed for me to be coddled or to use my arm as an excuse or to give me any special treatment just because I was a little bit different. And so whenever I think about, all those things, if I hadn't had that type of support system and that type of the people around me that were expecting me to be treated and behave just the same as they would if I had both my hands, I don't know if I would have had, some of that self accountability that I have. I think I gained some of that from, some of the people who were in my life and that, didn't allow for me to use my arm as an excuse. So then that just kind of carried over to me, and kind of having that same mentality and not letting myself have any letdown or expect any special treatment just because I was a little bit different. So I'm also hugely thankful, on the one hand, I can kind of look back and reflect on some of the personal drive that I had. A lot of it comes from the people around me as well.
Awesome, man. And, it sounds like even if they did treat you differently, you would have probably not enjoyed that. You probably liked the fact that, they didn't take it easy on you.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I was a competitor. So I just wanted to, I just had that, that was pretty natural. And so, yeah, absolutely 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing with, the like disability community is just like to not be viewed as less than or, like an outsider,
Yeah.
Just like we're people too. We have careers, we have hobbies, we have interests. We work hard, like don't automatically assume something or don't automatically assume that we can't do something or we need extra care or,
absolutely
that type of thing. And, that's what interested me about you after seeing your Instagram content. I kind of want to move into that. So for everyone out there listening, I do recommend checking out Casey's Instagram, which is Coach Casey Acree. There you can find videos of him doing different exercises. And there's one video I saw that actually one of my friends shared it. It was of you, I think it's a clean.
Yeah. Clean and jerk is I think
clean and jerk
video that you were talking about.
Yeah. And you have attached to your arm is like some sort of strap.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you get a grip on the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just thought that was neat. In high school, I played football and I remember doing power cleans and things like that.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of the form of it and all that. And the fact that you were able to throw that weight over your head with a strap was just very impressive to me.
Yeah.
How was it learning to use equipment like that strap? This may be a silly question, but is your right arm more strong to compensate for the left arm?
Yeah. So, the definitely right arm. My dominant arm is naturally stronger. Most of the things that I do will tend to isolate my right arm a little bit more than my left arm. And I guess kind of this conversation actually bridges the gap a little bit between sports and, kind of where I am now. And in high school, I really, really got into training and lifting weights and doing any type of additional work on top of just normal practices for my sports. So I would say that is whenever I started to kind of learn to adapt exercise a little bit to myself. I would say definitely through high school, there were many things that my teammates were doing that I just had not figured out how I was going to be able to do. I hadn't figured out the straps or any of the other kind of modifications that I make for movements at that point. But then when I was in college, whenever I was studying kinesiology, I was really trying to kind of experiment on myself and my body using different training modalities and programs and things like that I was learning about. I was kind of using myself as the test subject. So for a long time, I just was kind of doing like bodybuilding, the kind of classic, split, upper body, shoulders, back, legs, kind of focused exercises. And doing some of that, I started to figure out some of the different techniques or modifications or adaptations that I eventually carried over into CrossFit. But definitely whenever I got started with CrossFit, there's just so many movements that are full body, free weights. There's not any machines. Machines were always things that were pretty easy for me to come up with a method to use. As far as upper body stuff, I was able to start developing some strength in my left arm that I just hadn't ever worked or utilized whenever I was in high school. But then getting into CrossFit, like I said, there's just so many of these dynamic full body movements, Olympic lifting movements, like we talked about, the clean and jerk, deadlifting, snatches, pull-ups, all these things that really require you to, or at least to express optimally, require you to have use of as many limbs and as many, muscle groups as possible. So really for me, it was kind of just, I'd figure one movement modification out, and then that would kind of expand and lead me to another. And then that would expand and lead me to another. So for me, as far as like the strap that you're referring to that I use for like cleans, that all started with deadlifts. I found a canvas strap in a gym that I was working out in, and it was pretty sturdy, and it was a loop. And I was like, well, I wonder if I put this on a barbell, if I could hold on to it, because I'm lucky enough to have a little bit of my forearm. So I actually have some bicep flexion.
Yeah.
So I'm able to hold on to objects very minimally. But I saw this strap and I was like, hey, maybe if I put this on a barbell, I can deadlift with both arms attached to the bar for the first time in my life. Up to that point, anytime I had a workout with deadlifting, I would come up with a modification for it. So started with that. And then working on that and doing some other movements related to deadlifting, I realized that if I, pick that bar up and explode my hips, if I wrap my arms around that bar, I can catch the bar up on my shoulders. And so that's what a clean is. So it's bringing the bar from the ground up to your shoulders. And then from there, it's just really over the years in practicing movements, kind of changing up the strap, changing up the setup and the length of it, has just kind of built on and on and on to the point where, when it comes to CrossFit, where, like I said, there's thousands of different movement variations and things like that you can potentially have to perform. There's very few movements that I kind of can't do at this point, just based on the limitation that I have and how the modifications or the straps work for me. I just haven't found a way to perform some of these movements. So yeah, I mean, the progression has just kind of been find out how to do one thing, work on it as much as I can, become highly proficient at it, and then the skills and the practice that I've used to develop that kind of open up the doorway for this movement. And then I work on this, and then that has a kind of expanded to, be able to perform some fairly complex and high skill and pretty challenging full body movements that, at first thought you wouldn't think someone that only has one hand would be able to do. The strap that I use is actually kind of funny, is a Razor scooter strap. So it's I had that initial strap that I found in a weight room that I was working out in, and I had used that for a little while, and it was kind of getting to the point where I was seeing the limitations that it had, as far as like the size that it was and how it felt in my arm. It was starting to tear up my skin a little bit when I was using it. So I was in my buddy's garage, and actually my best friend, my business partner, he and I basically learned CrossFit together. Once we started doing it, we started doing CrossFit together. We were in his garage all the time, like kind of teaching ourselves the movements. And he had a Razor scooter, and the old school Razor scooters, they used to fold up, and then they had a strap that you could unclip, clip to the other side, and so you could carry it over your shoulder.
Okay.
So I've taken that strap now and kind of modified it and changed where the buckles on it are to where the size of it is like ideal for the length that I need it to be for me to wrap it around the bar. And whenever I hold on to it, it basically mimics the same length as my forearm. And it also feels comfortable in my arm. So I've kind of become attached to it being a Razor scooter strap that I use, and I've bought like 10 of them. Unfortunately, Razor, the scooter brand, they basically only make like electric scooters now, so they don't even produce these straps anymore. So I have to find them on like eBay from like China, because I've had them rip and break over time just from using them and stuff.
Yeah, I assumed that it was like a special strap that you had bought specific for weightlifting.
I know. And that's what most people think. And I get a lot of messages on like Instagram from other people who, have the similar adaptation to me, and they want to know, where they can find it. And I always tell them, I'm like, this is what it is. I find them on eBay every once in a while. Myself and my family members, just every once in a while, we'll go on and just check in to see if eBay have any available, so that I kind of have a little bit of a stockpile of them. And I have a video on YouTube actually where I kind of show how I modify it and the changes that I make to it to make it a little bit more comfortable and to figure out what the right length on it is for myself. But yeah, you would think so. And there are some pieces of equipment that I've actually made. So I do have a smaller strap. The circumference of the strap is a little bit smaller. And I use it for some specific movements. I use that for snatches, which are basically very similar to a clean, except for instead of the bar stopping at your shoulders, the bar comes straight from the ground all the way to overhead. So I need for that strap to be a little bit shorter, so that whenever I'm holding onto it here, the bar is very close. So then whenever I flip over, the bar is able to land right on top of my arm. And so again, that was I had learned how to clean proficiently. And then I started messing around with some different ways to make my strap a little bit shorter on the bar. I would actually, the longer straps that I had, I would put them on the bar, and I would take like an entire roll of athletic tape and just basically, tack down like half of the circumference of the strap that I was using to make it a little bit shorter, so then I could perform that snatch movement. So, it's just all been a gradual progression for me, learning how to do these things. And then also to kind of answer the whole, right arm, left arm balance type thing, being able to learn some of these full body movements have actually helped me to catch my left side up with my right side a little bit.
Okay.
I basically went 19 or 20 years doing pretty much everything with just my right arm. So I actually, before I started training, was far more imbalanced. And it actually gave me, when I was in high school, I had some low back issues, some shoulder issues and pains from playing my sports that were likely kind of related to, the muscle imbalances that I had. So I've actually been able to learn and develop ways of isolating my left side to kind of catch it up to my right side. So there's definitely still some differences and some imbalances. And I think that there's just kind of like a top end to the level of strength that I'm going to be able to develop on this left side. But I've always just tried to keep them as balanced as possible. And I'm thankful for my kinesiology background, because it's allowed for me to kind of know, okay, when it comes to CrossFit movements, there's a lot of things that I have to do that are actually putting this shoulder in the incorrect position. So let's just say, for example, where this shoulder is externally rotated, that's the correct position for certain overhead movements. My left side, I'm actually internally rotated. So I've learned that I need to do some supplemental exercises and some additional things for this left arm to kind of compensate for that, to keep this shoulder healthy, so that it doesn't become, totally in the wrong position or lead to injuries, later on down the road that, could eventually end my ability to do CrossFit and end my ability to do some of the more dynamic things that I do. I've just kind of learned where those additional kind of supplementary exercises need to be targeted to, keep myself healthy, ultimately keep my arms balanced out.
Yeah, you have to work out smart, to avoid injuries.
Yeah.
I'm learning that. I'm 30 years old now.
Yeah.
If I don't stretch enough, I can tell the next day. And it's not like when I was younger and I could just dive into something.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I think it sounds like you have you have a master's degree in it. So It sounds like you had the knowledge and education to kind of teach yourself things, adapt things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's probably fun for you, is to figure out how to come up with ways to use this strap and supplemental. It's probably a challenging activity, but it's probably I could see that being fun.
Yeah, it is. And it's rewarding whenever it pays off, whenever you see this thing that you want to be able to do. And, I think some people kind of take for granted what they have, and, they don't, some things can just come so naturally for people that they don't place any value on it. And I think that my challenges have, increased the value I have in being able to do any exercise at all. And I think that that's one big thing that, kind of carries over into my coaching, for people of all backgrounds and fitness levels, that when it comes down to it, being able to move and exercise I want everyone to view that as a gift. It's not something I don't want for people to feel like they have to do it. I want for people to feel like they get to do it. And I think people should be so thankful for what their bodies are capable of, because there are a lot of people who have even greater and higher physical limitations than me. And being able to compete and participate in adaptive sports has kind of opened up my world. And I've gotten to meet a lot of people who, they don't have any function in their entire body from their abdominals down. And they're exercising. They're finding ways to challenge themselves. They're finding ways to, optimize the physical capacities that they have relative to their situation. And so whenever you've been able to expose yourself to that and kind of see that, it makes you so much more thankful for what you're capable of. And I think that, disabled people kind of get, I guess, I don't know, pigeonholed or kind of show ponied as being like inspirational, but you see why. Because it gives people perspective into their own lives. Because someone who is totally able-bodied and have been given the gift of, just naturally having everything that's functioning normally, like I said, they can kind of take it for granted in what their body is capable of doing, and the opportunities that they have. And I think that, a lot of times people like us and other people that I've met can inspire people that are, fully capable to start taking a little bit more pride in their bodies and not take what they're physically capable of for granted, because, at any given time, it could be taken away. You never know, when an accident can happen. And I've met a lot of people from the military or who have had, life-changing physical accidents. They weren't born with their disabilities. They had them happen to them, and they've had to totally relearn everything. And those people that I know who were exercising and training and training their bodies before, they have a much easier time relearning, how to adapt to their new situation, because they've been working on optimizing their physical capabilities for their whole lives. So whenever that tragedy strikes, they're able to get back to what they were doing a little bit easier. So I think that's some good perspective for everyone, that, you only have one body. And, to me, we should all be trying to optimize what it's capable of, no matter what your situation is.
I agree completely, man. And I think you said that perfectly. And that's why I started this podcast is, I want not only the disability community, but just anyone who's listening to kind of just keep in mind that adaptability comes natural, I think, to the disability community. And we are pigeonholed, as you said, but at the same time, we are fully capable of taking matters into our own hands. And yeah, man, I love what you said. I think the disability community is probably the most adaptable community there is, because you have to every day, learn new ways to just function, So, yeah, man, I think let's end on that one, man. That was like a powerful statement there.
Thank you. Yeah.
But before, getting off of here, I let my guests give a shout out to an organization, that they want to promote. Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. The organization that I want to make everyone aware of is a nonprofit that's called Team Some Assembly Required, abbreviated as Team SAR. TeamSAR.org is their website. And Team SAR, basically what they do is it's a military founded not-for-profit. Their entire mission is to increase opportunities in exercise and competition for adaptive athletes. So they do a lot of different things. They raise money to help pay for gym memberships for military veterans who have suffered an injury while in service, or just congenital adaptive athletes or whoever it may be that they feel are deserving of a gym membership. They raise money for that. One of their big missions that they're trying to get started this year is to increase opportunities for youth adaptive athletes and provide hold some camps and some training seminars for younger athletes who are maybe missing limbs, or who are in wheelchairs, or have neurological or visual adaptations, to give them an opportunity and a place to see that they can compete, they can be fit, they can exercise just like everyone else. They have helped to expand the reach of adaptive CrossFit by sponsoring athletes, myself being one of them, to go to various competitions and compete against able-bodied athletes. One of the big ones that they do every year is the Arnold, which is held in Columbus, Ohio. That they have a CrossFit competition there, and every year Team SAR has an adaptive team that goes and competes alongside able-bodied athletes. So ultimately, their mission is to provide opportunities for disabled and adaptive athletes to get into fitness, to optimize their ability to compete, and give opportunities wherever they can. So that's Team Some Assembly Required. Like I said, teamsar.org, or they're on Instagram at Team Some Assembly Required.
Right on. And if you're listening, and just click show description, and there'll be a URL there you can click on to check that out. It sounds like a really solid organization that I've never heard of. So that's good that you mentioned it. Mm-hmm. And you also have you're co-owner of a gym yourself.
Yes.
Summit Systems. You want to pitch that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Summit Systems, you can go to summitsystems.org, or best way to find us is on our social media, just at Summit Systems on Instagram. Like I said, we provide on-site personal training and coaching for people in our area. But actually one of our biggest deals is our remote coaching. So I coach individuals all over the country. And so it is personalized fitness for any background, any fitness level. A lot of our clients are former competitors, people who have done either sports or have competed in CrossFit, who are trying to still find purpose in their exercise now that they're just training for health and training for their life. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to encourage, is that, you can still find purpose in exercise beyond just preparing for a competition. And finding that value in exercise also beyond just trying to look better in the mirror, which that can be huge for a lot of people. But we try to find some intrinsic motivation that will allow for you to see the carryover from your exercise into your life. And I feel like that's kind of one of our biggest missions, is to help people, find that purpose in movement.
Awesome. And then what's the Instagram and URL?
The Instagram is at Summit Systems, SUMMITSYSTEMS. And then the URL is www.summitsystems.org.
Awesome, man. Thanks for sharing those two. And I really enjoyed talking with you today, Casey.
Yeah, man. Thank you, Lance.
I didn't get around to talking to you about how to help my knees, so maybe that'll have to be a future conversation. So,
for sure, man.
But you're a busy man. I don't want to keep you from your day. So I think that's it for this episode, man.
Awesome.
I really appreciate your time, and
yeah,
we had a few reschedules, but I think it's all good, and I'm glad it happened.
For sure.
Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thanks,
and
dude. You too.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
And that does it for episode 19 of the See-Through Podcast. If you want to learn more about certain organizations Casey talked about, just click on the show description. I'll have some links there for you. So check those out. If you're new to the podcast and you like the episode, do me a huge favor and follow and subscribe to whatever platform you're listening on. I release episodes every Sunday, so there's more episodes like this to come. You can also follow the podcast on social media. The handle is at SeeThroughPod. And if you're not new to the podcast and you're a weekly listener, you can still do me a major favor by leaving a review on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on. Every little thing helps as I try to grow this thing. Last but not least, if you have any suggestions for me, from guest recommendations to how I can make this podcast more accessible, or just like an interesting take on an episode, feel free to DM me on social media, or you can email me at theseethroughpodcast@gmail.com. I really appreciate everyone listening, and until next episode, stay transparent, everyone.